All right, this is for Algebra 2, Semester 2. We're going to start in Chapter 7. And so it's going to be on page 309. Which if you have a book, you can turn to page 309. First ones are going to do 1, 2, and 3. One has an A, a B, and a C. So we'll do 1 A, B, C. You can do 2 and 3 A, B, C. Number 1A says x squared equals 3. And the directions just say to solve. So we want to get x. We don't want x squared, we want just x. So opposite of a square would be a square root. So the square root and the square will cancel each other out. And you're going to need a plus and a minus radical 3. When you square root both sides, squaring a negative would be a positive and squaring a positive would be a positive. So you have to put the plus and minus. Now 1b, we have x minus 1 squared equals 3. So again, we're going to square root both sides. The square root and the square will cancel each other out. You'll get x minus 1 to come out equals, again, plus or minus radical 3. We still just want x, so we're going to add 1 to both sides. X equals. Now, you cannot add the 1 and 3. The 3 is inside of a radical, so that's like a 1.76 something. You have to leave those apart. They're not like terms. So put a 1, put a plus or minus, and then put a radical 3. Always put the whole number in front, put the radical number in the back. There is 1b. And then 1c says 2x minus 1 squared equals 3. We're again going to square root both sides. Square root and the square cancel out. 2x minus 1 comes out, and you get a radical 3, but it's got to be a plus or a minus. You're going to get rid of the 1 first, and we know what to do with the 1 from last problem. So you're going to get 1 plus or minus radical 3. Then we're going to divide both sides by 2. And you're just going to leave the 2 there. You're going to leave it as 1 plus or minus radical 3 over 2. Now, if you would rather, you could break that down into 1/2 plus or minus radical 3 over 2, because you have a common denominator of the 2. But I think this answer would be a better answer right there. So that's how you do 1. Then we're going to skip up to 7. You're going to do 2 and 3 on your own. So you'll do 7, 8, and 9. So here's number 7. It says y minus 7 squared equals 12. So square root both sides. The square root cancels out the square, so you're going to get y minus 7 plus or minus radical 12. Now before we do anything else, this radical 12 has a perfect square of a 4 that can come out of it. So we're going to need to change that. So we're going to do y minus 7 equals plus or minus 2 radical 3. That's just basically what we call simplifying it. Radical 12 can become a 2 radical 3. And then we're going to add 7 to both sides. So this cancels out. You get y equals 7 plus or minus 2 radical 3. And there's your answer. So 7, 8, 9 are like that. And then we go to 13. Now 13 is about completing the square. So we want to solve this x squared minus 2x minus 5 equals 0. We want to solve this, and we can't factor it because there's no factors of 5 that would give us a 2 back in our Algebra 1 days. And we could use the quadratic formula because we have a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is negative 5. But what they want us to try is they want us to try the completing the square, just like what we've been doing here when we square root both sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to take x squared minus 2x, and we're going to add 5 to both sides. So we're going to leave a space and put equals 5. We need to make this a perfect square, this whole thing right here. To do that, you're going to divide by 2. So I'll put your little steps over here. Divide middle term by 2. That's your first step, and in that case you get a -1. Step 2 is to square that answer. So you would take this -1 and square it, which in this case is a 1, and then you would add it to both sides. So you're going to put a +1 on both sides. So this was step 1, this was step 2, this was step 3, and you've got your completed the square. So let's bring this down. X squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 5 plus 1 together makes 6. Now we have made a perfect square, because this -1 is going to come down into here, and you're going to get x minus 1 squared. It's going to make this right here is going to factor into a perfect square since we did the 3 steps, and you're going to equal 6. And now it looks just like number 7 up here. You can square root both sides. Square root cancels out the square. X minus 1 equals plus or minus radical 6. Add 1 to both sides. So x equals 1 plus or minus radical 6. And you have your answer. That's called completing the square. You need to write down these 3 steps. So pause the video if you need to write those 3 steps down on your paper. And that's how you're going to do 14 through 16. Just the same way. Now I'm going to do one more of those because I know they're tough, but I'm going to do the number 1 on your worksheet. So if we go to the worksheet number 1, and it's actually 1 through 10, are all completing the square problems. So, and that gives you plenty of room to show your work. So you got r squared minus 4r minus 98 equals -10. I'll show you how fast these can go. So I don't always have to write all those 3 steps down. Once you wrote them once, you'll know the steps. You're going to add 98 to both sides. You're going to put r squared minus 4r, leave a space, and then you're going to get 88 here. You are going to divide this by 2 and square it. You're going to add that to both sides. That's going to get added to both sides. And this right here is going to be in your parentheses. R minus 2 squared is going to be in your parentheses, and you're going to add these 2 together and get 92. That's how fast these can go. Square root both sides. Square root and the square cancel out. R minus 2 equals plus or minus radical 92. Now, 92 does have a perfect square of a 4 that can go in it. 4 times 23 is 92. So you're actually going to get a 2 radical 23, and it's going to be r minus 2 plus or minus. So you're going to add 2 to both sides. So r equals 2 plus or minus 2 radical 23. So do the step-by-step on each problem. I'll give you one more on your worksheet, and then you can finish up the rest of the completed square problem. A squared minus 12a plus 11 equals -9. Subtract 11 on both sides. Get a squared minus 12a equals -20. Now this one is one of those ones, I'm glad I did this one, it's one of those ones you would not use completing the square. If you see this one come out as a negative, not completing the square. not a good idea, and you should try the quadratic formula. So we would take this, and A would equal 1, B would equal negative 12, and C, we would switch it by adding 9 to both sides. So we would want to make it equal 0. So we would add 20 here and make it equal 0. So C is going to be 20. So if you remember your quadratic formula, x equals opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you write that down once, you probably don't need to write it a bunch of times, but it might help if you did. So opposite of b would be a positive 12 because b is negative 12. Opposite would be a positive. We got b squared would be negative 12 squared, which would be 144. Minus 4 times a is 1, and c is 20, all over 2 times 1. So 12 plus or minus the square root of 144 minus 80, all over 2. So 12 plus or minus square root of 64 over 2, and actually this one was not because it came out as 8. So 12 plus 8 would be 20 over 2. 12 minus 8 would be 4 over 2. So your answer would be a 10 and a 2. So 10 and a 2. Completing the square wouldn't be a good idea on that one because again you had a negative 20 there. Now, it still would have worked, because you could have done the 3-step, and you would have been fine there on that one. So that was number 2. I'll do one more. Well, the worksheet we're going to do, you should be able to do the rest on that worksheet. Number 11 on the worksheet is where you'd start the quadratic formula. 2x squared plus 4x equals 14, and you would want to get it equal to 0, so you subtract 14 on both sides. 2x squared plus 4x minus 14 equals 0. Then you should always list A, B, and C down so you don't mess those up. It's a good idea if you write the formula a couple of times, just so you have it down, so you have it memorized. So opposite of 4 would be negative 4 plus or minus 4 squared minus 4 times a is 2 and c is negative 14 all over 2 times 2. So it's negative 4 plus or minus 16. Let's see, what's negative 4 times 2? That's negative 8. And 14 times 8. 112, and that's going to be a positive 112. All over 4, so negative 4 plus or minus radical 128 over 2. Now 128, I believe, is 64 times 2. Yeah, but that's 128. So you could take out a square root of 64 times the square root of 2. You'd have negative 4 plus or minus 8 radical 2 over 2, and then reduce all of it in half. Your actual answer is negative 2 plus or minus 4 radical 2. There's a quadratic formula problem, and when you do the ones in the textbook, like number 1 on page 313, you're just going to do the same exact formula. X squared plus 6x plus 4. Now they already set that one equal to 0 for you, so they made it a little easier. A is 1, B is 6, B is 4. So X equals the opposite of b would be negative 6 plus or minus b squared. 6 squared is 36 minus 4 times 1 times 4 all over 2 times 1. Negative 6 plus or minus 36 minus 16 over 2. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. Negative 6 plus or minus radical 20 over 2. 20 does have a perfect square of 4 and 5. 4 is a perfect square. So negative 6 plus or minus 2 radical 5 over 2. Now this square root of 4 comes out as a 2. That's where I put that 2 right there. These you could reduce them in half. 2, 3, and 1, and a 1. So your actual answer for number 1 would be negative 3 plus or minus radical 5. You don't have to put the 1 on the bottom. You're done. So there's number 1 on page 313. There's number 11 on your worksheet. I feel like I still need to do number 3 on your worksheet. Just one more completing the square, just so you have that down. So let's do number 3 on the worksheet. If you want to watch it, you can. If you want to stop the video and do it on your own, you can. But there's number 3. We're going to add 22 to both sides. So b squared plus 2b, we're going to leave a blank, equals 24. Okay, there was 3 steps. First one was divide this by 2. That's step 1. Take that answer and square it. That's step 2. And then add it to both sides. That would be step 3. And then you can make your parentheses, because this 1 squared is what we have. B plus 1, and that's the squared right there. 1 squared, that's the 1 squared. Equals 25. Square root both sides. Square root cancels out the square. You get b plus 1 equals plus or minus. Square root of 25 is 5. So when you subtract 1, you're going to get b equals negative 1 plus 5 and minus 5. So negative 1 plus 5 and negative 1 minus 5. That would be a 4 and a negative 6 would be your 2 answers. Those actually came out as numbers. No radicals in that answer. All right, you should be able to do the rest. And I'll walk around and help you out if you need.